This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. After going bankrupt, I delivered food and ran into my arch-nemesis. She deliberately humiliated me. Kiss me, and I'll give you $100,000. The next second, I grabbed her chin and kissed her. Her face turned red as she stammered and tried to push me away. How can you do this just for money? I pinned her down on the sofa and kissed her fiercely. Afterwards, I left with a few million in checks, completely satisfied. Meanwhile, my arch-nemesis was left disheveled, her face covered in kiss marks, looking utterly dazed. The weather turned cold, and just like that, the G family declared bankruptcy. From the moment I received the news of my family's company going under to the day I put on the yellow uniform to deliver food, only a month had passed. A man like me who once got hit by a car and still managed to crawl up and keep playing games finally couldn't hold it together anymore. Having lived over 20 years as a pampered young master, my life plan was simple: take over the family business after my father retired and make sure it didn't collapse. I thought my life would be smooth sailing, but now I feel like my nose is turning red. Finding a food delivery job was no easy task. It sounds simple, but it's actually not at all. And yet I quickly received a home, my emotional breakdown, especially when the door in front of me opened and I saw Hailey's freshly awakened face. The smile I was forcing immediately collapsed. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, and my childhood friend, also my arch-nemesis, Miss Hailey, had just woken up. Damn rich heiress, lazy and unambitious. I hate this kind of spoiled brat the most. Compared to me, Hailey looked dazzling. That face was still stunning, her fair skin flawless, even without makeup, her delicate features bright and captivating. Even her messy tousled hair somehow looked stylish. She lazily leaned against the doorframe, not reaching out for the food I handed her. At first, she looked surprised to see me, but then a teasing smile spread across her face. Young Master G, what a coincidence. I gave a half-hearted smile. Yeah, 7 days apart feels like a whole week. Hailey turned elegantly and walked inside. Come in. I resisted the urge to throw the food at her face and instead thoughtfully placed it on her dining table. Remember to give a 5-star review. Then I turned to leave. Wait, her voice came from behind. I turned my head and was about to speak but froze. Hailey was lounging lazily on the sofa, the neckline of her expensive silk nightgown slightly loose, revealing her delicate collarbones. Her beautiful face carried a playful smirk, her eyes bright and mischievous. Out of nowhere, she suddenly tapped her lips with her finger. Come on, kiss me, and I'll give you $100,000. I instantly understood her intention. Memories flickered in my mind. Years ago, during a trip, I nearly drowned because I couldn't swim. It was Hailey who saved me with CPR. When I regained consciousness, I was in a daze for half a day, refusing to answer anyone, my expression dark. She thought I despised her for it, and her eyes turned red with anger. She even snapped, saying that if she had known, she would have just kicked me farther out to sea for a vacation in the Pacific. This incident was often brought up by our mutual friends, who laughed at how the ever-popular Miss Hailey had been treated with such disdain. They said I looked like I had lost half my soul, and now it seemed that the spoiled Miss Hailey still held a grudge. I smirked. Are you serious? Hailey maintained her lazy posture. If I looked closely, I could even see a bit of smugness, like she had won a battle. She nodded. I never go back on my word. But Rocky, you. Before she could finish, I took a long stride forward, grabbed her chin and kissed her. Her words were swallowed by the sudden kiss. Hailey's eyes widened in shock. She was stunned for a moment before finally reacting, pushing weakly against my shoulders. Her strength was so feeble that it felt more like an invitation than resistance. Our lips pressed together. Her lips were soft, unexpectedly so. Hard to believe such a soft mouth could always say such infuriating things. Sensing that she was running out of breath, I pulled away slightly and smirked. Miss Hailey don't even know how to breathe. Don't tell me this is your first kiss. She panted slightly, her pale skin tinged with a rosy flush. Even her ears were turning red. Rocky, you. Her beautiful eyes darted around, avoiding my gaze. Look at me. Why don't you dare to look at me? I tightened my grip on her chin, my other hand resting on the back of her neck, my voice slightly husky. One kiss, $100,000. That still stands, right? Hailey turned her face away and mumbled, it does? Oh, then let's continue. I leaned in again, taking full control. Hailey's entire body tensed up. The once high and mighty heiress was now melting under my kisses. I left Hailey's apartment with a few million in checks, completely satisfied. She was still sitting there in a daze, holding the pen and the check, her lips glistening, looking utterly wrecked. No way that effect would wear off in under 30 minutes. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, I ran into Tony, someone I used to call a friend. After my family's downfall, he took every chance to mock and humiliate me. He was the reason I was delivering food in this area. Otherwise, with my degree from a prestigious university, university, it shouldn't have been this hard to find a job. His face darkened the moment he saw me. Why are you here? He didn't even get the chance to sneer at me for delivering food. Instead, he looked nervous. I found it amusing. This idiot always made his weaknesses too obvious. Hailey wanted me here, so I came. I wasn't lying. After all, she was the one who ordered the food. Just from that one sentence, Tony's expression instantly twisted with rage. Rocky, you shameless bastard. Do you really think you deserve to be with Hailey? Noticing my yellow uniform, Tony seemed to relax slightly and sneered condescendingly. Know your place and get lost. You're not in our league anymore. I blinked and suddenly said, your parents must be really funny people. Tony frowned. What the hell do you mean? Otherwise, how could they give birth to such a joke like you? Ha ha ha. Tony clenched his teeth but said nothing. I smirked and turned away without looking back. Old friends after all. Wishing you a life where someone feeds you your meals and pushes your wheelchair, huh? Sure enough, not long after cursing out Tony, I got fired again. I squatted by the roadside looking for a suitable brick. I couldn't find a brick, but a debt collector called sounding arrogant. Faintly, I could hear my mother crying in the background. I gritted my teeth, forced myself to stay calm, said a lot of nice things, and then ran to the bank to transfer the few million I had just received. Hailey never lacked money, so I felt no guilt about spending hers. Besides, growing up, I had spent countless amounts on her and done countless things for her. Loan sharks are a bottomless pit. No matter how much you pay, it's never enough. For someone drowning in debt, jumping from the 50th floor would be a simple end, no more worries. Leaving the living to suffer. But how could I hate him? My father had raised me well for over 20 years. It wasn't until after his death that I learned our company had been in crisis for years. He had hidden it from me all along, because he knew I had no interest in business and only agreed to take over to avoid disappointing him. So he wanted me to enjoy a few more years of freedom. I ran home. The door to our rundown rental was open and I heard a woman sobbing inside. I stepped in. The few pieces of shabby furniture were smashed together. I silently started cleaning up. My mother, her eyes red from crying, clutched my hand. Before she could speak, I reassured her. I just paid off a portion. They won't come bothering us for now. She choked up. But how are we supposed to live? How do we go on like this? I didn't know. I didn't know how to go on with this damned life, but I still forced a smile. There's always a way, Mom. Trust me. Anyone wishing for a boyfriend to fall from the sky, you're in luck. I feel like jumping. But after standing on the rooftop of our not-so-tall rental for a while, staring at the unremarkable view, I came back down. After pulling myself together, I continued job hunting. I couldn't let Tony find out, so I had to settle for temp jobs. Fortunately, I had my handsome face. Some upscale restaurants, hotels, and even stores only hired good-looking staff. Like this restaurant's manager. One look at me, and he immediately told me to start working. No nonsense. While carrying a tray to serve a table, someone grabbed my arm. It was a heavily made-up, middle-aged woman giving me a sleazy smile. Oh, when did such a handsome young man start working here? You must be in your early 20s, right? Tisk with that face and height, what a waste as a waiter. You must be in trouble. Let's get to know each other. I can introduce you to a job that pays much better. I frowned expressionless and shook off her hand. Sorry, I'm working. She pouted. Oh, come on, just chat with me first. Your manager won't mind. We're old friends. In over 20 years, I had never been treated like this. More than feeling broken, I'd say I was feeling bankrupt. She leered at me, lowered her voice and said, don't be so stubborn. I'll take care of you. Just spend a night with me. We can discuss the price. As she spoke, she held up her fingers, showing a number. My expression remained cold. Lips pressed into a thin line, I turned to leave. But she wasn't giving up, grabbing my hand again. Stop pretending. You're already a waiter. What's left to hold back? I was thoroughly disgusted by her touch and shook her off again. I didn't expect her to fall straight to the ground. At 187 centimeters, I worked out regularly. I was naturally strong. Her dining companions rushed to help her up, then both started hurling curses at me, like two mad women. I kept my face blank, staring at them coldly, until one of them raged, twisting her face, rushed forward to slap me. Before her hand could land, someone caught it, and then in an instant slapped her back. The speed and force shocked the onlookers into stunned silence. I turned my head. Hailey. Her face was icy, her presence commanding. Standing tall and straight, she looked down at them like they were trash. The restaurant manager, who had been hiding, suddenly rushed forward. He immediately ordered security to restrain the two troublemakers, then bowed, repeatedly apologizing to us. Hailey narrowed her eyes. Let people like this in again, and you can pack your bags and leave. The manager broke into a cold sweat, bowing nonstop. Just moments ago, he had looked at me with contempt. Now he was fawning over me, humbling himself. I unclenched my fist. Hailey grabbed my wrist and walked me out of the restaurant. Watching her figure ahead of me, I smirked slightly. Unbelievable. My childhood rival, my enemy, had had become my protector. Sitting in her sports car, I closed my eyes exhausted. Another job gone? Hailey's tone was laced with sarcasm. Rocky, how come I never noticed how independent you are? I opened my eyes. Are you complimenting me? She laughed. Of course. I was puzzled. Hailey, why are you angry? Hailey suddenly slammed on the brakes, pulling over. She turned to me sneering. Who are you to me? Why would I be angry? I frowned slightly. Her anger seemed so unreasonable. I was the one suffering. What was she mad about? Glaring at me for a long moment, she finally asked, Rocky, do you not know how to use your mouth? Why didn't you ask me for help? If you just said the word, I would give you everything. Our eyes met. In those clear, sincere eyes, there was no hidden agenda. I was momentarily dazed before smiling lazily. You're so good to me. Hailey huffed and turned away. Don't flatter yourself. It's just because we grew up together, but I grew up with a lot of people. Hailey froze for a moment. Before my family's downfall, I had many friends from the same circle, all close and harmonious. Afterward, aside from Tony, who took pleasure in kicking me while I was down, most people simply kept their distance. The G family was truly finished. There was no chance of revival. Some friends still helped me, lent me money. I was grateful because they knew I couldn't pay them back. As for the rest, I wouldn't shamelessly ask them for favors. And those so-called family members who once preached about being one big family, the moment they finished scavenging the last remains of the G Corporation, they shut their doors. The H family had been closest to us. After the bankruptcy, they helped as much as they could. I didn't know if Hailey's family was aware my father owed not only the bank, but also a massive amount to loan sharks. But there was one thing I was sure of. I would never ask Hailey's father to pay my debts. Hailey said that when my family got into trouble, she was abroad handling work, overwhelmed and completely unaware of what had happened. She had only returned to the country in the past couple of days. After waking up from jet lag, she found out everything and was about to contact me when she happened to see me delivering food. She couldn't hold back and teased me, but she didn't expect to be the one getting played in the end. She said she really didn't know that this was how I was living now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. Halfway through her sentence, she abruptly stopped. Hailey's fair ears turned completely red. She really was just joking. She never expected. Hearing this, I couldn't help but swallow hard. I also hadn't expected myself to be so impulsive yesterday, but I pretended not to care and waved it off casually. Ah, it's just money. I'll just consider it as getting bitten by a dog. Miss Hailey's face darkened instantly. Gritting her teeth, she spat, "Get out of my car." Acting as if I didn't hear her, I squinted and smiled at her. How was my kissing technique? Want to kiss a little longer? Want a discount? In an instant, Hailey's cool, pale complexion flushed red. This time she was tongue-tied. You. I suddenly felt playful. The contrast between her usual arrogant, untouchable demeanor and this pure reaction was too strong. It was fascinating. I unbuckled my seatbelt, leaned in toward her, and playfully lifted her chin, locking eyes with her. Kiss or not? I smiled at her, my gaze innocent, purely wanting to tease her. But suddenly Hailey pressed the release button on my seatbelt and grabbed my wrist. As the distance between us closed, the atmosphere became increasingly ambiguous. Even the air seemed to thin, making it a little hard to breathe. Hailey stared into my face, her rosy lips slightly parted. But before she could say anything, I surrendered first. Miss Hailey, I was wrong. I was just joking. I admitted defeat so quickly that Hailey was stunned for a second. Her grip on my wrist tightened slightly, then she let go. She sneered, settled back into the driver's seat, buckled up, and started the car. I turned to look out the window, pretending to admire the scenery. My heart was pounding like crazy. Hailey took me back to her luxurious penthouse in the city center. She was a bit of a clean freak. As soon as she got home, she took a shower, changed into clean, comfortable clothes, and came out drying her hair. I was too focused on my phone to notice she was behind me until she spoke. Startled, I quickly locked my phone and glared at her. Hailey, unfazed, stood up straight and handed me a hairdryer. Blow my hair. I smiled. Wow, that's a bold request. 100,000. Miss Hailey, is this temperature good for you? I sought wealth and luxury, not an ounce of sincerity. After drying her hair, it was soft and fluffy. Wearing simple, clean pajamas, her bare face remained exquisite. Her large eyes were clear and bright, full of youthful charm. As I put away the hairdryer, I muttered, "Why do you still look like you're 18? Hailey lazily flopped onto the sofa. "I will stay young forever." Heh. My phone chimed. I glanced at it. Bank deposit of $100,000. Hailey, you're truly timeless. Every time I see your magnificent face, it brings back such fond memories of our school days. I originally thought Hailey was just a rich fool. Now I realize she really is a rich fool, because she casually said she'd help me pay off my debts. I was so moved that I nearly teared up. Really, it's several million. Oh, then never mind. Hailey chuckled and picked up a bank card that had been casually tossed onto the table, placing it in front of me. me. I was stunned. She wasn't joking. She continued, "I've already arranged for someone to help your mother pick out a house. If she doesn't find one soon, you two can stay in a hotel for now." Seeing my shock, Hailey cleared her throat and emphasized, "Your mother has always been good to me. I can't bear to see her suffer." Since childhood, Hailey had been sharp-tongued but sweet-mouthed, always flattering my mom, who adored her like a daughter. Happiness came too suddenly, and my brain felt blank. When I was completely helpless, Hailey hadn't been there immediately. But now, through her actions, she proved she genuinely hadn't known. And once she found out, she wouldn't just stand by. After a long silence, I admitted honestly, "I can't pay you back." Hailey raised an eyebrow. "Who's asking you to? Besides, did you forget something?" I looked puzzled. "What did I save your life or something?" Hailey averted her gaze unnaturally. "It's just you, I feigned innocence." "We what? That thing from a few years ago." "What thing?" 5 years ago. And then what happened 5 years ago? Hailey suddenly turned to face me, her clear eyes narrowing dangerously. "You seriously forgot everything?" I looked even more innocent. "Then tell me. Just say it instead of all this we know. How am I supposed to guess?" Her expression became complicated, tinged with anger, and her ears turned slightly red, probably from frustration. "Idiot." She roughly ruffled her hair, stood up, and walked toward her room, shooing me away. "Pack your things and get to the hotel. It's arranged." "I'm going to sleep." I got up and followed. "How can I do anything else if you don't tell me? Just say it outright. I'm really curious." Hailey had already reached her room. Seeing me follow, she paused, crossed her arms, and blocked my way. "I'm not telling you." "Don't come in." I tilted my head. "Hiding a lover? Or are you that much of a clean freak that you won't even let me in your room?" Hailey stared at me for a few seconds before raising a hand to shut the door. I said no. I pressed against the door. "Then tell me." After a brief standoff, she suddenly let go, and since I was pushing, I lost balance and fell forward onto her. She was much smaller than me and was easily knocked over. At the last moment, I shielded her, becoming a human cushion. Hailey landed on top of me. Her fresh post-shower scent filled my nose, making my head spin. She looked up at me with wide, startled eyes. My mouth went dry. My whole body tensed up. I quickly pushed her off, got up, and bolted. "Forget it. I don't even want to know anymore." My face burned hot. Behind me, Hailey chuckled lightly. A moment ago, she had been furious. Now she seemed quite pleased. In just a couple of days, my circumstances had turned upside down. I was truly grateful to Hailey. Deep down, I swore that as long as it wasn't illegal, whatever she asked, I'd do it. But she didn't ask for anything illegal. She asked me to be her bodyguard. I gladly accepted. On my first day as Hailey's bodyguard, she was still asleep at 9 in the morning. I knew right then I had made the right choice. Tomorrow, I'll set my alarm for 9. Tonight, I'll pre-squeeze her toothpaste and sleep in for 3 more seconds. Before Hailey graduated, she had already taken on part of the family business. After graduation, she directly became the president of the branch company, handling a huge project abroad, which she completed perfectly. She has always been the proud daughter of the H family, an outstanding student since childhood. Her work abilities must be exceptional. Otherwise, a girl wouldn't have such a great chance at inheriting the family business. That's what people in the circle say. I feel reassured Hailey is really something, and it seems that this job, which seems to have no prospects, actually has a bright future. On the first day of work, I arrived early to wait for Hailey at the company entrance. On weekdays, Miss Hailey sleeps in until she wakes up naturally. She messaged me saying she was on the way and asked me to wait for her so we could go in together. Soon a luxury car drove up to the entrance and I looked up stunned. Hailey got out of the car and my breath caught in my throat. Her long seaweed-like hair, a face so exquisite it was almost perfect, a waist that could be held in one hand, long and fair legs, and an amazing body proportion. Hailey walked up to me, her long pale hand waving in front of my frozen eyes. "Where's your soul?" I swallowed hard and struggled to shift my gaze. "Hailey, you dress up for work. Why wouldn't I? But this way, it's not good for the company's development." Hailey frowned. "What's wrong with you early in the morning?" As expected, once we entered the company, the male employees couldn't take their eyes off Hailey, as if they wanted to spin around 36,000 degrees and kneel with flowers in hand to propose to her. From another angle, Hailey is a good boss who even gives out benefits to employees. It seems like this could promote the company's development, but I'm no slouch either. To be a good bodyguard, I wore a sharp suit, tall, long legs, broad shoulders, and narrow waist, and the tailored suit made me look even more striking with an air of noble leisure about me. Several female employees stared at me while Hailey, with a cold face, scanned the room, and everyone immediately disappeared and went back to work. Hailey had someone take me to do my onboarding procedures. Afterward, I took the initiative to greet a few male employees who had been eyeing me. Maybe I seemed friendly, and easy to get along with, so they immediately came over to talk to me. After a quick introduction, they asked one after another, "Handsome, how did you get close to President Hailey?" Yeah, you guys seem so close. Are you guys?" I looked a little innocent. "We're not that close. Normal distance, and we didn't act particularly familiar." One male employee seemed confused. "Isn't President Hailey afraid of men?" I've never seen her talk to any male employees except for work reports. I froze for a second and burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, afraid of men, ha ha ha, who's spreading this nonsense?" The male employee said, "Seriously, President Hailey herself?" I instantly stopped laughing. "What?" But quickly I figured it out. Probably some other employees tried to get close to her and made up a lie to avoid unnecessary trouble. So I just helped her keep up the lie. I just had a flashback, and it seems like that's the case. They were even more curious than why. I said, "Seriously, maybe because I'm her distant cousin." Upon hearing this, they all looked at me with understanding expressions. No wonder she suddenly hired a male bodyguard. It must be because she's helping out a distant relative whose family's fallen on hard times. So their gaze became more friendly. Soon the female colleagues found out that I had no special relationship with Hailey, and many of them took the initiative to want to get to know me and exchange contact information. This news somehow made it to Hailey's ears. She sneered, not saying a word. Then by the afternoon, a rumor started circulating at the company. The new handsome bodyguard is afraid of women, stay away from him. Actually, I had little to do, nothing much to work on. Hailey was serious about her work, putting away her ladle-like demeanor, focusing intently handling various documents. The office door suddenly knocked. When there was no response, the door opened. The person who came in was dressed flamboyantly, a big man, and he was wearing heavy perfume. His smile instantly faded when he saw me. "Rocky, what are you doing here?" I waved at him from the sofa, smiling brightly. "Hello?" Tony, looking sickly, turned his head to look at Hailey and quickly wiped off the expression, forcing a smile. "Yuyan, how come Rocky is here? Is he trying to bother you?" When Hailey saw him, her expression instantly turned cold, her face showing clear displeasure as she frowned tightly. "What are you doing here again?" I instantly burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, who's the one bothering Hailey? Everyone knows it." Tony gritted his teeth, fury in his eyes. "Shut up. I warned you long ago, you and we are from different worlds. Don't think about things that don't belong to you." I chuckled, about to retort, but suddenly had a brilliant idea and held back. I got up and walked over to Hailey's side, looking completely wronged, my clear eyes full of innocence. "Sister, he's so fierce, I'm a little scared." Hailey's expression froze. I gently tugged at her sleeve, looking up at her with my deer-like eyes, gazing at her with deep affection. "Sister didn't hear, he said I'm from a different world than her. But in my world, it's all about sister." Hailey's temples were throbbing. Tony angrily tried to push me away. "Stay away from Yuyan." But before he could reach me, Hailey, standing up, blocked him with her hand. Her tone was extremely cold. "Try to touch him." Tony's face paled, and he looked embarrassed. But I wasn't done with my act. Though I was taller than Hailey by a head, I pretended to hide behind her, looking at Tony innocently. "Brother, your expression is so fierce, so scary. Don't scare sister." I turned to look at Hailey. "Sister's backing me up, feels so good. Sister works so hard and brother comes to bother her. Unlike me, I'm always thinking about how to help her. But sister, don't be mad at brother. I'd be sad if you're upset." Unable to watch any longer, Tony glared at me fiercely and stormed out. Once the door closed, I immediately clutched my stomach and collapsed into Hailey's chair, laughing. That felt so good. Hailey turned her back to me, so her expression was hidden. "You?" After laughing, I checked the time, stood up with renewed energy, and said nonchalantly, "Life is for enjoyment. When it's time to clock out, I'm out. Life has its ups and downs. Happiness is just about food." I originally wanted to try the food at the company cafeteria, but Hailey took me to a high-end restaurant. Sigh, such luxury, this life of indulgence. I'd be happy to be Hailey's bodyguard in my next life. After we ate, just as we were about to leave, Hailey ran into an acquaintance and asked me to wait for her while she talked. I nodded obediently, saying, "Okay," but not long after her phone suddenly rang, and I stood up looking around but couldn't find her. I hesitated whether to answer, but the call was already disconnected. Hailey's phone had no password, and my finger slipped, opening the screen. It was a search page, and several search records caught my eye. What does it mean when a guy suddenly calls his rival sister? Do guys only act cute with the people they like? If a guy says a girl is his whole world, does that mean he likes her? How to remind a clueless fiancé that he still has a fiancée? After reading, I felt like someone had pressed a gun to my forehead and pulled the trigger. Bang! My head was buzzing. Too many keywords spinning in my mind. For a moment, I didn't know where to begin. I exhaled deeply, my gaze lingering on the word fiancé. Damn, I forgot. I was engaged to Hailey. 5 years ago, Hailey's 18th birthday celebration was grand and luxurious with guests from all over. What What no one expected was that Hailey's grandfather publicly announced the news of a marriage alliance between the H family and the R family. At the time, Hailey, who had just kicked me, froze and looked at her friends beside her. The H family. They were also shocked, but their ears were fine, all nodding in agreement. Hailey's brain couldn't process this. Who from the H family who's getting engaged to Hailey? One friend with a complex expression replied, "Hailey, are you dumb? You're the only daughter in your family." It was a thunderclap, a bolt from the blue, a shock to the core. She looked incredulously at the other person involved. Obviously, I had no idea about this, either my expression slightly confused. At that moment, my mom had already walked over to my side, whispered a simple explanation in my ear, and then pushed me and Hailey toward Hailey's grandfather. It turned out that their elders had already arranged this matter without consulting our opinions. No wonder some media were invited, holding cameras and filming us non-stop. Under Hailey's grandfather's kind gaze, Hailey and I exchanged engagement rings and linked arms, smiling happily. No one knew that Hailey was almost squeezing the life out of my arm. I smiled, looked down, gently fixing my stray hair, leaned in close to her ear and whispered, "If you squeeze me again, I'll make you give a public engagement speech, believe me." Hailey chuckled lightly. "It's only been 10 minutes since I found out, and you've already gotten so into character." I pulled her hand down and then intertwined our fingers tightly. "Let me suffer a bit, young master." "Hailey, suffer my ass." The next day, the media, having been paid, made a huge deal out of it. The focus, of course, was not on Hailey and me being childhood sweethearts, but on the powerful alliance between the H family and the R family's companies. The profits were unimaginable. Their goal had been achieved. But Hailey and I firmly refused to acknowledge this, and we grew more irritated with each other. Whenever we met, we argued and fought. Our mutual friends were relieved, happily commenting, "I knew you two couldn't be secretly getting along. The birthday party turned engagement, and we thought you were just pretending. Exactly, matching up random couples. We can't even put you two in the same room, let alone have you share a bed." Hailey's face darkened, her thin lips pressed into a straight line. I frowned, inexplicably a little annoyed. Was she still angry? Did she really dislike it that much? So I spoke up in agreement. "The rings are just for propping up the table, it's all an act. Don't bring it up again." Okay, we won't bring it up, don't be mad." "Alright, we won't mention it. You two better not fight." But Hailey froze, suddenly stood up, kicked the table, and stormed off. As I recalled it, all my emotions were mixed. After that incident, hardly any friends brought it up in real life, and the buzz online quickly died down. The elders hadn't pushed too hard. Seeing that the two younger generations were unwilling and their objective had been achieved, they didn't mention it again. Slowly, I forgot about it. But Hailey hadn't. She always remembered. Thinking of this, my breath slightly faltered. Why? Why did she remember all this? In the afternoon, Hailey said she was going to officially assign me my first job. I nodded seriously. "Go ahead, do you need me to go undercover as a spy at the competitors?" "Do you have that kind of ability?" Hailey scoffed, handing me a tablet. The page on the tablet was exactly the same as the one I had seen on my phone a few days ago. A national top-tier architecture company's design competition. I stared in surprise for a few seconds, then looked up at her. Hailey smiled beautifully, her eyes bright, revealing two small tiger teeth, playful and lively. "Win a prize." She took me to another office. It was just as spacious, and the design style was consistent with her own office. The vase on the desk held delicate dew-laden white roses. Everything was neat and clean, as if it had just been tidied. "This will be your office from now on." So the reason she said there wasn't an office earlier was because it hadn't been set up yet. I asked, "Aren't I your bodyguard?" Hailey leaned lazily against the doorframe and nodded. "Yes, and such good treatment. Is there a problem?" I looked up at her, my face calm. "Our company has nothing to do with architecture. Why do you want me to compete?" Hailey turned and walked off. "I don't care. This is your job. Do it well, and let's see what happens if you don't win." I stood there for a moment, then let out a soft breath. The corners of my mouth couldn't help but lift. Hailey was being too kind to me. I majored in architectural design and minored in economics in college. My parents had no objections as long as I had fun, and then came back to inherit the family business. But then the family encountered unexpected changes. This architecture design competition was highly prestigious. The winner would not only become famous, but also have a chance to join the company behind the competition. This was a dream for countless participants. Originally, I wanted to enter, but after so much happened recently, my mind couldn't settle to create. Now Hailey was pushing me forward. She wanted me to chase after what I wanted. I walked into the office, noticing the beautiful white roses. The language of white roses is pure, untainted love, youthful friendship growing together. For the next period of time, I put all my energy into my creation. In architectural design, my grades had always been excellent. My teachers praised me, and I won many awards proving that I had the ability. ability. But just as I was busy, someone shamelessly tried to pollute the air around me. I'm sure Tony must have found out that I entered this design competition. I ran into an angry Tony downstairs in the community. He came straight to the point and questioned me why I was entering the competition. I calmly looked at her and said without any emotion, "You really are like a rat." "What did you say?" "I said you're like a rat in the gutter monitoring my every move." I smiled, confident and full of spirit. "Tony, I'm curious, how jealous of me are you?" Tony tried to convince herself she had the right to say what she did. "Haha, jealous of you? Why would I be jealous of a bottom dweller whose family went bankrupt and is buried in debt?" I nodded. "Oh right, not just jealousy but fear. Is that why you're questioning me out of the blue, afraid of losing face, huh?" Tony and I were college classmates, and we were once close. He got to know Hailey through me. Now that I think about it, maybe he only got close to me because of Hailey. Suddenly I smiled lightly. "This competition is different. You probably won't be able to use any backdoor tactics this time." His face turned pale. "What nonsense are you talking about? You really think I don't know? Why is it that in several competitions you came first and I came second?" "I knew, but since you were my friend, I didn't expose you. Losing to me every time, always failing to get good results. It must be tough for you, so I try to understand. But you know what? You're so obvious with your tricks. Those designs that win first place, anyone can see there's something wrong with them. Yet you think they're flawless. Everyone else is laughing at you behind your back." I said each word slowly, thinking my tone was calm and harmless, but Tony was trembling with rage. I would never forget what this person did to me. Someone I had treated so sincerely, only for them to stab me in the back. It hurt so much. Even though life was already difficult then, he still found a few men to warn me to stay away from Hailey. Luckily, I happened to be home that day. Those men, seeing how beautiful my mom was, were about to get handsy. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, my eyes bloodshot, face fierce, and without fear I scared those men off. At that time, my mom was the only one in that rundown rental house who knew how terrifying it was for her and how hard it was for her not to be psychologically scarred. I honestly thought about killing Tony. "Tony, do you really think I'm easy to bully? Do you think I can't fight back when you kick me when I'm down? But I'm not a weak person. I don't just swallow my anger. Just wait, one day I'll repay you for everything you did to me. I'm not some saint, and when the time comes I'll humiliate you properly. Believe me, what goes around comes around. Bad people get what they deserve." Tony breathed heavily, nearly exploding with rage. He raised his hand to punch me, but I was quicker, kicking him to the ground. Then I sat on top of him and punched him relentlessly. He couldn't defend himself, his face bruised, and in the end he shouted out an apology. No guts at all. I stared at him and said word for word, "This isn't even close to being settled. Tony, you better be on edge and restless, waiting for more retribution." I stood up, took a tissue from my pocket, wiped my hands, and threw it on his face. "My relationship with Hailey is none of your business," I said firmly with confidence. "After all, in Hailey's eyes, even 10 of you aren't worth one of me." Tony thought that because my family went through trouble and Hailey didn't help, she must have despised me. He thought he could bully me because he thought I had no one by my side. "You like her, but the one who's been her childhood friend for over 20 years is me. Do you understand what 20 years means? Think about it." Suddenly I thought of something and acted surprised. "Oh, right, I forgot to mention." I smiled, my eyes narrowing. "Hailey is my fiancée." When I got home, I couldn't help but laugh, thinking about Tony's face that changed colors like a chameleon and his trembling, speechless expression. But that wasn't enough. He needed to suffer more. At 10 p.m., while I was drawing the design, my phone rang. It was Hailey calling. "Rocky," she said, stuttering, "come pick me up. There was a party tonight, but her tolerance for alcohol was always terrible, and it seemed like she was drunk." I princess carried Hailey home and placed her on the bed, but she refused to release her grip on my shoulder. I placed my hands on both sides of her body, my voice soft but firm. "Hailey, listen, let go of me." But she hugged me even tighter. Hailey wrapped her arms around my neck, pushing me closer to her chest. "Hey, Hailey, wake up." Hailey buried her head in my neck and rubbed it in and hugged me. She closed her eyes, looking dazed as if she were drunk. Her warm breath brushed my neck, burning my skin. She muttered, hug me, Rocky, Rocky." Suddenly my heart softened and I stopped resisting. "Are you still a child, acting so spoiled? I really want to record this." "I'm not a child, so I can't be hugged." "Exactly. Then I am a child. Hug me." I suspected she wasn't even drunk. How else could she make such logical requests? I quietly let her hold me for a while, but then tried to push her away. I needed to make some wake-up tea, or she would have a headache tomorrow. But Hailey wouldn't let go. She opened her eyes just a little, her expression full of pleading and a touch of grievance. "Rocky, don't leave." I patiently explained, "I'm not leaving, I'm going to make you some wake-up tea." She seemed to not understand, only repeating, "Don't leave, don't. Please don't be mad at me, okay?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You're so drunk, How could I be mad at you? I want to spoil you even more, haha. I looked into her eyes gently, my voice soft. Hailey, don't worry, no matter what you've done, I'll forgive you. Drunk Hailey was kind of cute. Her voice took on a crying tone as she repeated, don't be mad at me, I'm sorry. I froze, getting closer to see her clearly. Are you crying? Hailey loosened her grip and slowly sat up. She lowered her head, her long hair covering most of her face, making it hard to read her emotions. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke, I feel guilty. At that moment, countless thoughts flashed through my mind. Could it be that she was the one who ruined my family? What could she have done that would make her feel so guilty and apologize while drunk? I also sat up, not rushing but gently coaxing her. Hailey, don't cry, please tell me what happened, okay? Hailey fell silent. After a long while, she lifted her head, her eyes wet and red. When you were in trouble, I didn't return to your side in time. Rocky, did you suffer a lot? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I froze, feeling like my heart stopped beating for a second, the pain a sharp throb. Then I forced a smile, but my eyes were filled with tears. Hailey, the perfect girl, was so silly. She helped me so much, saved my life, did everything she could, and became my support. Now she still remembered the month I suffered and wasn't there for me. I tried to smile, but I choked on my words. Finally, the tears fell one by one. Hailey looked at me, panicked, wiping away my tears, while her own tears fell, guilt written all over her face. Don't cry, don't cry. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you for so long. I shouldn't have ignored your messages. I was so busy back then, the project team had a spy. Rocky, please don't cry. I'd been through so much recently. The suffocating feeling of being lost with no future, it was unbearable. I never imagined Hailey would be so heartbroken for me, crying for me, feeling guilty. But she hadn't done anything wrong. Hailey pulled me into her arms, and I responded. After a long time, our emotions settled, but neither of us let go. In the quiet night, only our breathing and heartbeats filled the air. My voice was hoarse. Hailey, don't feel sorry. I'm really grateful. Thank you for being by my side. Then Hailey fell silent for a very long time. Finally, she suddenly lowered her head and leaned close to my ear. Her voice was soft, tender, but firm as she said each word slowly. If one day you only have one person by your side, it will definitely be me. It was a promise, a guarantee, a vow. The night was still and our hearts beat as one. I have a secret, one I've been hiding for many years. I like Hailey. I'm not sure when I first realized it, but I do like her. However, she always acts so arrogantly, making me feel that she sees me only as a friend. So I've kept my feelings hidden, carefully playing the role of her rival childhood friend. Because I like her too much, I've even become a little timid. I'm afraid that confessing after all these years might ruin everything. The day I delivered food, I kissed Hailey without hesitation. It was because I felt that I might never see her again, maybe not even a few more times, so I gathered the courage for just one bold act. I used my reason of working for money, and she didn't suspect anything. I had liked her for so many years, so what's the harm in kissing her once? Besides, it was her who brought it up first. Later, I never imagined she would do so many things for me. I was deeply moved but a little helpless. This feeling might never go away. I'll probably like her for the rest of my life. That night, I don't know how, but I fell asleep. When I woke up the next day, I opened my eyes and saw her beautiful face. The shock hit me like a wave, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. I could still recall how she looked when she was younger, still so beautiful. Actually, I should be older than Hailey by a few days. As I thought, Hailey suddenly spoke. How much longer are you going to stare? I was startled, quickly snapping out of my thoughts, immediately pulling away and sitting up. You've been awake this whole time. Hailey opened her eyes, her ears slightly red, but she teased me. I thought you were going to kiss me. I had indeed considered it. Embarrassed, I snapped. How could that be? Do you think I'm that kind of person? Hailey propped her head up, grinning. If you hadn't kissed me, I might have believed you. Half a month later, the results of the architectural design competition were announced. I won the gold award by a landslide. The judges were all in awe of my work. I didn't let my efforts go to waste. The competition was grand, but my design became even more popular as it rode the wave of cultural confidence. My work was in Chinese style, exquisite and beautiful with many fine details. I had spent so much time and energy researching it. At the awards ceremony, when I gave my speech, I wore the engagement ring from 5 years ago. Hailey, who was invited to attend the ceremony, was sitting in the audience. Through the countless cameras and people, I smiled at her, my gaze soft and full of affection. After the ceremony, we went home together. Hailey had worn a high-end evening gown for the event. The back of the dress was open, exposing her smooth smooth, fair skin. I found it hard to look at her, but Hailey didn't look away, staring at me without blinking. After just a few minutes, I couldn't take it anymore and irritably asked, "Why are you staring at me? Then why aren't you looking at me?" I paused, turning my head to look out the window, deliberately snapping, "Don't mind me." My ear and side face were a little flushed. She shifted closer, sitting right next to me, then cupped my face in her hands, turning me toward her. "Look at me." Our eyes met and she blinked. "Am I pretty?" I looked at her for a while, then helplessly closed my eyes, my tone softer. "My heart might explode." She laughed. "But what can I do? You have to look at my naturally beautiful, heavenly face every day. Get used to it." I sighed softly and smiled. "True, since I'll be looking at you for the rest of my life, my fiancé." Hailey froze. "You what? Shouldn't you go search your brain to see why your not-so-smart fiancé remembered our engagement?" Before she could answer, the car stopped. I grabbed her hand and got out. We went inside. At the entrance, just as I closed the door, I pushed Hailey lightly. Her back hit the door. She seemed confused. "What are you doing?" I lowered my head and kissed her lips. Our lips met in an ambiguous, lingering kiss. Hailey froze for a few seconds, then gradually we pressed closer together. She gasped, trying to push me away, but her sobs only deepened the kiss. I locked my hand behind her head, not allowing her to pull away. The feelings I had been suppressing for so long were finally released. In the end, I lifted Hailey and placed her on the couch. Then, without looking back, I went into the bathroom alone. Hailey sat on the couch, her mind a little blank from the kiss, breathing heavily. On a summer night, the evening breeze was comfortable. Hailey and I sat together on the balcony, sipping a few drinks. After 2 glasses, Hailey's gaze became a little hazy, so I didn't let her drink anymore. Hailey asked when I remembered the engagement. She lowered her eyes, a little upset. "You completely forgot about it before." I felt guilty, not daring to tell her I had seen her search history by accident. So I told a kind lie. "Actually, I've always remembered." Her eyes lit up. She looked up at me. "Really?" I nodded firmly. But the next moment, Hailey's face fell again. "Then why did you act like you didn't remember before? Why does everything feel like a trap?" I quickly leaned in and kissed her cheek, changing the subject. "Anyway, lovers will end up together." She smiled sweetly. We snuggled up together. "Rocky, actually, when I was 18, I already thought of you as my future husband," Hailey said, suddenly her gaze intense. I froze for a moment. "I've always believed that I would marry you, and you could only marry me. No surprises. Elders always said that we were a perfect match, a match made in heaven, and that we'd be very happy together." Even though I knew these words might have been said because they weighed the pros and cons, I still felt happy hearing them. Really happy. For a proud girl like her to say this, it must have taken half her life. Her fair, delicate face turned red. I took her hand, intertwining our fingers. "Hailey, I love you. This heart will never change until death." After the news about Hailey and me getting married spread, it shocked the whole company. Wasn't it supposed to be a distant cousin relationship? I rubbed my forehead. "Oh no, lies will have their consequences." My explanation didn't work at all. The rumors spread so fast, and it seemed like nothing could stop them. The gossip somehow reached Hailey's ears. Normally so cold and silent in the company chat, she suddenly sent 3 messages to the entire team. "Rocky is not my distant cousin. He's lying. He has always been my fiancé. Always. We've been childhood sweethearts, grew up together. Rocky and I have no blood relation. None." A bold colleague decided to gamble and posted, "I knew it. After all, Hailey, the CEO, and Rocky look like such a perfect couple." What a detail. I went from bodyguard Rocky to Hailey, CEO's fiancé. Hailey, seeing this message, was delighted and immediately sent a red envelope. The chat exploded, everyone sending LOL, congratulations, and such a perfect match. It felt like a large-scale pyramid scheme. Hailey was pleased, and her anger disappeared, generously sending more red envelopes. I patted her head and laughed. "You're a spendthrift," but my face was full of happiness. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.